We want to thank all of the press for being here with us this morning to celebrate the official launch of Yes on One Maine to Reject Big Pharma. My name is Kara Sachs, and this is my co-campaign manager, Sarah Kenny. We want to invite you also to enjoy some coffee and donuts because we understand you're in for a very exciting morning with some back-to-back sort of dueling campaign launches. So welcome and thank you for being here with us this morning. We also want to thank all of these incredible people standing behind us, some of whom you will hear from briefly this morning, for the blood, sweat, and tears that they have put into this incredible campaign over the last 8 months. They represent only a small portion of those who have volunteered to put their lives on hold to save our state. It has been a difficult but inspiring and life-changing road for so many Mainers leading up to this day. Difficult because it has not been easy to watch as multinational pharmaceutical companies polarize and divide our state with fear and propaganda in order to undermine our fundamental rights as a sinister means to increasing their already outrageous profits. Difficult because one morning just over a year ago, so many thousands of Mainers going about their regular lives woke up to learn of a draconian and discriminatory bill that would force their families to choose between their right to medical freedom and their right to access a school education for themselves and their children. Difficult to witness a political process designed to represent the will of the Maine people that instead forces bills into law that are not in the best interest of our state, but instead the wish of leadership and handsomely paid lobbyists. This has been a difficult road, but also an inspiring one. Inspiring because in response to this shocking law, a group of concerned Maine parents, doctors, educators, and community leaders rose up and came together last spring to reignite the independent spirit of our proud state. Inspiring because when this bill passed the legislature by one vote due to dark money and lobbyist influence, these folks didn't give up, but instead got stronger, initiating a people's veto and securing our place on this ballot by gathering nearly 100,000 signatures from every nook and cranny in Maine. And inspiring, most importantly, because we have watched in awe as countless Mainers across the state have seen this law for the toxic, divisive, and cruel piece of legislation that it is, and they have joined us in resoundingly announcing with their support for Yes on One that here in Maine, our freedom is not for sale. Yes on One Maine to Reject Big Pharma began as a small grassroots group of concerned volunteers motivated by the highest ideals. But over the past year, we have blossomed into a truly unstoppable movement, fighting for the character of our state and for all Mainers, for the physician who values informed consent and medical freedom, for the parents who will never sacrifice their parental rights, for the students who insist on their right to an education, for the people of faith who value their religious liberty, and for all Mainers who understand that we are in this together and that good public health policy should bring people together, not tear them apart. The vote on March 3rd is one of the most important votes we will have in Maine history. There is so much more at stake than meets the eye, and with so many stakeholders, this amazing People's Veto effort brings us all together. If you believe in controlling what goes into your own body, then you are a Yes on One voter. If you believe in protecting our state from being bought and sold by Big Pharma, you are a Yes on One voter. If you believe in an education system for all where discrimination has no place, then you are a Yes on One voter. And if you are a proud Mainer who knows that our independence is what makes us special, then you are a Yes on One voter. Thank you again for being here today. Take just a minute. We can shuffle everybody in, and you can come join us on this side too, or find a seat, whatever works. There we go. Joining us after caucus, thank you. Good morning. So I'm going to invite Dr. Zach Mazzoni, who's a family practice physician, up to the mic to give a few words.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Zach Mazzoni. I'm a board-certified family medicine physician, and I operate and own my own practice here in Maine. I've been asked to be here today to share my perspective on the people's veto that has been placed on the ballot on March 3rd as a citizens' initiative to repeal a recently enacted legislation which removed our constitutionally guaranteed rights, our personal and religious freedoms. I realize that there's been great debate on this issue, and I want to state plainly that I admire and respect the sincere desire that many of my colleagues have shown in striving to find ways to promote health. However, my concerns run much deeper than the way in which this argument has been portrayed as solely involving a single issue of vaccines. When we look at this new law, which I'm hoping will be repealed, we see that the legislation is not about a vaccine issue. For the legislation did nothing to change the recommended schedule in the state. The only change that this law enacted was to remove moral and religious freedoms. This bears repeating. The only change that this law enacted was to remove moral and religious freedoms. Therefore, the repeal of this law would not in any way limit one's ability to have access to vaccines. It would only restore to us our rightful personal and religious freedoms. I have two deep personal objections to this law. The first is centered on the fact that the law is blatantly unconstitutional and profoundly violates the core principle upon which our country, our Constitution, and my therapeutic relationship with my patients is built. Namely, this law does not respect and protect the individual's right for self-governance. 30 years ago, when I joined the United States Navy as an officer, I took an oath where I solemnly swore to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, that I would bear true faith and allegiance to the same principles of this Constitution. I took this oath under God. There was no time limit on this oath because it was meant to ensure that my commitment to my country would never stop. And now, for the first time in my life, I'm seeing a real threat to our Constitution. And it's not coming from a foreign enemy, but rather from attempts to create legislation domestically that strip us of our constitutionally protected rights and freedoms. Freedom of conscience and freedom of religion are two of the essential pillars our Constitution protects. In fact, the first portion of the first sentence of the First Amendment of our Constitution clearly states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. However, this law does just that in stating that the government of Maine will no longer respect the free exercise of our religious rights to choose. There's no justifiable argument to do away with someone's freedom to choose. What they believe in their religion or life must be protected. We also see in our Declaration of Independence the same concept which states we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. This statement teaches us several principles about our nation and our freedoms. First, our rights do not come from government. We are born with them.
That's right.
Second, our rights are never meant to be separated from us. They are inalienable from us. Therefore, our rights to freedom, our rights to liberty, can never be lawfully taken away from us by any government. Thirdly, we see that any system created to govern the people must derive its just power by the consent of the government. And this leads me to my second objection. This current law takes away that consent. It takes away my ability as a physician to do my job in serving my patients. As consent of the governed is essential and central to our government, so consent of my patients and of the parents of their children is central to proper medical care. My job as a doctor is not to be a policeman for the state or for anyone in attempting to enforce someone else's viewpoint on what you need to do in your life. This is why I am here today, not in my white coat, as my job should never be to attempt to force you or anyone to do what I tell you to do by using inappropriate leverage. To try to do this would be to break the precious and sacred healing relationship that we are meant to have with doctors and providers and patients. My goal, rather, as a true doctor should be to provide what is called informed consent, which is the ethical foundation for how medical decisions are and should be made with patients every day. This principle clearly states that for every medical decision, I, as the doctor, am responsible for giving the patient all the available information that I have on the potential risks and the benefits of every medical decision. Then, after giving the patient the available information, I'm to respect and, in as much as I can, support their decision. This principle does not compel me to approve or to personally agree with the decisions that my patients choose for themselves. Rather, it's intended to ensure that I respect the will and choice of my patients. There may be decisions that I disagree with. I may personally not be aligned with, such as the use of high-sugar diets or alcohol or tobacco. However, my beliefs should never be a platform from which I can require or mandate compliance. Similarly, we as a nation, we as a state, need to refuse to allow ourselves to override the essential rights of others, even if our intentions are well-meaning. We should instead do what we're called to do as a nation, as a state, what I'm called to do as a doctor. We are to promote the general welfare, not mandate it. I believe that everyone should be given information about the risks and benefits offered by vaccinations, that all should have access to vaccinations, and that all should have their personal freedoms protected as they make their own personal informed choice about what they decide is best for their bodies and the bodies of their children. As a family medicine doctor, I aim to provide the best, the most accurate medical information possible for my patients, and will always respect their informed choices no matter what their spiritual perspectives, their lifestyle practices, or their beliefs may be. And today,